Hi again, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of, as it says, Talkin Beavers, heading to Memorial Stadium in Berkeley, a magical place for the Beavers in this 21st century. Cal, not so magical of late. They started 5-0. They've dropped 4 straight. They're still seeking bowl eligibility. And the Beavers have toppled them a couple of times in their bids over the years to get to that 6th win level. So we'll talk about that and a whole lot more. Steve Priest joins us on set. We're glad you've joined us. It's Talkin Beavers coming up. We welcome you into another edition as we take a look at the home of the Beavers. Just one more game. That's coming up a week from Saturday at Reeser. We come to you from the beautiful Flat-Tailed Brewing Studios as we welcome you into the Memorial Stadium Trip to Berkeley edition. Mike Parker along with Sports Illustrated's Lindsay Schnell, former Beaver and NFLer Slade Norris, both Oregon State graduates, and it's great to have you in. And let's just jump right into coming out of the last game at Reeser Stadium.
Let's jump in so we can jump right back out.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to look at some numbers in a second. They don't paint they do not tell a good story. But what's your first takeaway, Slade, coming out of that beatdown by UCLA?
You know, I went down last week, watched a practice, talked to Coach. These kids, they're practicing hard. I mean, they're in there. What I think really they lack is an attention to detail. And you go through and you watch the last couple games. I mean, they have even small things like wearing the correct stuff on game day. I mean, you're supposed to wear white shoes. You got some guys trying to be individuals wearing gray shoes. I mean, stuff like that. I think it looks incredibly small, but when you look at the whole,
divides a team.
It does. And you go through and you have these starters that are out there doing stuff like that, and the guys that are younger looking up to them all of a sudden, well, if they're not doing it, I mean, maybe I can show up, 5 minutes late to a meeting, and then all of a sudden it's say maybe, I don't go all out in this play in practice, and it just trickles down. It's so the smaller things they have to correct, and until they do that, this team is never going to play as good as they can.
I think that's really interesting. I agree with all those observations. First of all, just that those are little things, like details matter. People who say don't sweat the small stuff, every head coach is sweating the small stuff. Every successful head coach is sweating the small stuff, without a doubt. But I just thought, they regressed, We sat here and we talked about they played so well. They hadn't put together a complete game, but they were so close. And then they go out there and, the crowd flat out abandoned them at halftime. And Gary Anderson said he understood why.
Yeah, the thing that's interesting, though, and we'll get into this a little bit more as the show goes, the crowd was still very much engaged late into the second quarter because, to the Beavers' credit, their defense was playing well enough early. It was a 10-0 game with UCLA backed up deep. And Gary marveled at how loud the crowd was. With about 5 minutes to go in the second quarter, It was still a game.
It was, and then things just got away. When you're young, when you don't have a lot of talent, things can get out of hand quickly. That's the bottom line.
And what I was looking at with the practice, and they're playing hard throughout the games. Even the score doesn't show that. Their effort, I think, is there. But you've got to play smart, and I don't care how hard you're trying out there. If you're not doing it in a smart way, the score's going to be like that every single time.
I disagree with that. I do not think that every single player is playing hard, because I don't know how many more ways Gary Anderson can subtly call his team out in the media, but he's running out of them. And then after the game, I asked, Josh Mitchell and Storm Woods came in. They were the player representatives, and they made a comment about having to take the young guys and kind of help the young guys, coach them up, and you want to leave the program better than when you walked in. And I felt like they were, I think unintentionally, sort of throwing the freshmen under the bus. And I said, do you think that the young guys are the only ones who need to get tougher and, play harder? And they both said no comment and walked out of the room.
This is the way I see it. They have a good group of people, but on this team, there are a few guys that are defectors, that aren't buying in, and I think that some younger guys are looking to those guys, saying, "Hey, that's a cool guy," and everything, and following that suit. As soon as we weed those individuals out, I think this entirely changes the team.
I agree, and I think the roster is going to look really different in January.
And whether it's a weeding out process, maybe some of that, but also maybe just guys, light bulbs come on and guys get what it's going to take to be part of Gary Anderson's era and program. Gary was asked about, given the losing streak that the Beavers have been mired in of late, he has a big job. What about his team's morale heading down the stretch?
First of all, I don't see a problem with the morale. I don't think it's down or out or they're, oh, woe is me. I don't feel that at all. But I do address it and try to always learn from a situation, and they have a responsibility to play for their seniors, number one, to play for their university, number two. And I think toughness is contagious within the team. There's different levels of toughness. There's some kids that just, love those moments that they get challenged in hard times or toughness or whatever it may be. But, we talk about it, but I think the most, you can either talk about it or you can be about it. And I think when it comes to toughness, we're working very hard to be about it with the way we practice, the way we work. We don't waste time. When we're out there, we get after it. We talk about being physical, and we work like crazy to be tough-minded and tough physically. So it's a work in progress, I would say, especially with a young, youthful team and having them understand what is the level between toughness. And we always talk about playing at this level up here that's really high in life, on the football field, socially, academically, and holding up that high level that we ask them to uphold where, quite frankly, most of the normal world doesn't live. They don't live where you have to live to be a big-time Division I athlete in the Pac-12. So toughness is part of that. So we talk about it and keep on grinding away at it.
I'm always inspired when I hear Gary talk, and you certainly hope his players are as well, as we take a look at the Les Schwab quick fix. Les Schwab doing the right thing since 1952. The Beavers did the right thing in that first quarter, as the numbers indicate, and even late into the second quarter, still very much in the game. But quarters 2 through 4 do tell a little bit of a different tale. But as we talked about earlier, the first quarter was impressive. Even into the second quarter, Gary talked about how proud and thrilled he was that the fans were just trying to will the team to a stop. But all of those things aside, Lindsey, Gary's impressive to me in those kinds of settings when he's talking about the challenge that he and his staff have with the team. I always come away pretty inspired listening to him talk.
Every time I hear Gary Anderson talk, he reminds me of Pat Casey. The first time that I sat down with Anderson, I thought Pat Casey and this guy could be great friends because they both embody what is important to Oregon State when we talk about hard work and the blue-collar mentality. There's an element of, and we're going to talk about the giant killers later, you can't buy into that too much. Like, Oregon State needs to stop being a giant killer. They need to be a giant. That's something I have heard throughout the athletic department in the last year. But I like that Anderson, he has not given up on them, even though sometimes it feels like they have given up on him. He's tough. He's setting an example of this is what it's going to take to play in this program.
I completely agree. Going down there and speaking with him, it was my first time doing that extensively, and I am a huge believer of his, even more than I was now. Just like you said, he does embody exactly what Oregon State is, and I cannot see a better fit for our program than a guy like him and Kalani to go lead this team because, emphasis, toughness, hard work, being accountable, those things, policing yourselves. He says that so much all the time to this team, and as soon as they finally get the head to start believing in what he's saying.
And above all else, they care about each other, and that's huge in the Oregon State community, and we know that. And
coming up, we'll talk a little bit more on the show about what the priorities are heading down the stretch for Gary Anderson and his staff. There's no bowl game reward, but we'll talk about the priorities over the next 3 weeks. But up next, it is time for Game Balls as Talkin Beavers rolls on. Welcome back to Talkin Beavers. Sonny Dykes in his third year, 1-11 to 5-7, and now on the verge of bowl eligibility. Later on, we'll break down the Golden Bears as the Beavers head to a stadium they haven't lost in the new millennium. But it's time now for our Wilson Motors Game Balls. Slade coming out of the UCLA game, or actually we'll start. Lindsey, who do you have for us?
Yeah, I took Storm for this, Mike. I thought he ran the ball pretty well, especially against, a talented team. 14 rushes for 87 yards. That's a 6.2 average. And early on, the Beavers were running the ball decently well. And I think that he does embody that toughness that Anderson is talking about.
And veteran leadership, too. He's the guy you see if there are issues manifest during a game. Storm's the guy first to get
to clean it up.
Yeah, he does a great job of that. Slade, what about you?
You know what? I'm going to go with the guy who this entire year so far never takes a play off. You watch film, and he's around the ball all game long, every game. He really embodies what I think Kalani wants out there, and that's Roma Mignao. He's a great athlete. He's a guy that's going to develop in this system and really lead the younger players. I love the way he plays, and he didn't really do much this last game, but I just love him being out there because every play, even though he doesn't make the play, he's influenced it and making it better for somebody else.
He's also hungry to get better. He's the player that he loves to watch film by himself, and that's a huge part of improvement.
And the Beavers are hopeful that Devin Chappelle, who had a good game against UCLA, the team's leading tackler against the Bruins, that Devin can continue that play against a high-octane offense in Cal's Bear Raid. Devin Chappelle, a local kid out of Springfield, and he is a guy that Lindsay had a chance to visit with at Pac-12 Media Day concerning a breakout player, Lindsay, with Kyle Pecco.
Devin Chappelle.
Okay.
He's going to be a big impact on our defense. He's very good at what he does, all about technique, and he's going to get after it.
And indeed, he got after it with 11 tackles against UCLA, and he'll be challenged again this week. Caleb Salo also with a good game. Jonathan Willis beginning to understand his role in this defense better, and Joshua James. But Devin Chappelle doing a nice job against UCLA, as some of these plays would indicate, coming in at times playing in the slot, at other times at safety, proper. But there's a lot that's being asked of Devin Slade in this defense, and this former walk-on is growing into a pretty significant role.
Yeah, especially with all the injuries we've had. He's been able to fill in nicely and give our team a lot of depth that we've needed. And you watch that on film there, and you see a decisive player, a guy that's not sitting there and waiting for the tackle to happen. He's going and making it, meeting the running back, right up at 4 yards, which is a safety coming up that quickly is great. However, as a team, we don't want him having to make 11 tackles because in the safety position, that's not what you should be leading. So I love his play, but as a team, not the best stat line to see that.
I think it's worth noting, that he's a former walk-on, awarded a scholarship this fall, like early in the fall, partially because, he plays his butt off at practice, and they thought he could be someone who contributed to him. And, when you have a local kid, and Slade knows this because he was a local guy, they're just going to play a little bit harder. That's the bottom line. That's not a knock on anyone who's not from the state, but it means a little bit more to them. They need more kids like that.
Well, Slade not only walked on, but worked his way to the National Football League. Speaking of the NFL, coming up, we have a guy that spent 10 years in the league. He's an Oregon State legend, and he joins us next on the set as we talk about a wonderful film about a great era at Oregon State. Steve Priest joins us next on Talkin Beavers. Welcome back into Talkin Beavers, and there he is. They called him, they called him the Fox, or Fox, when he was at Oregon State, the Beavers quarterback, and two of the greatest seasons in program history, finishing number 7 and number 15 in those giant killer years, 1967 and 68. We're going to talk more about the giant killers in a moment. Steve, thanks for joining us on set. OSU Hall of Famer Steve Priest. When you see that image of you in those days, what comes to mind?
Well, I was a lot better looking when I was younger. It just keeps getting older and older. I wish I could say it's vintage and it just gets better, but I don't think so.
Well, the nickname was well earned. Hey, Steve, before we get to the film about those teams that Alex Crawford has put together, we're really excited to talk about it with you. But let's just get a quick hit about the current state of affairs in this year of our Lord 2015, and the Beavers at 2-7. Just kind of what you're seeing going on in this first year with Gary Anderson.
Well, I think a lot of things come into play. I feel like that a major issue is the injuries. There's no question about that. I expected the Beavers to win more games than they've won. I expected them to play a little better. They've had injuries at critical positions, and particularly when Collins got hurt, that changed the dynamic a lot. But you look at across the front line, you got 3 offensive linemen, including Gavin Andrews and Luina, and some people have been injured, and Caleb. So you've lost a lot of oomph up front. But right now, I think it's a transition time. They have found they've got to put in a new dynamic in that team. They've got to change the attitude, change the discipline, change a lot of things. And it's just the way they play football versus the way it was played before, as far as how the players react to each other and so forth.
Did you think that transition was going to go smoother? It's interesting to hear you say that you thought they were going to win more games, because I'm not convinced even if they were healthy they would be winning games. I
think it would have been smoother, yes. I thought they would have won more games. I thought it would have been easier. And I do think, I'm not saying we were going to win 8, 9, 10 games, but I felt like we had a chance to go to a bowl if the people would have stayed there, because our strength should have been offensive line #1. And when you lose, like I said, 3, 4 guys, that makes a big difference. The quarterback play has surprised me a little. It's been a little bit more up and down, and probably more down than I thought. And that was kind of a surprise. But I think that all those guys are playing hard, and right now I think that's what he's trying to achieve, is get these guys to play consistently hard.
The final thing on that, just getting them to play consistently hard, toughness he's brought up a lot. Can it be, and he was asked this week, Coach Anderson was, can toughness be taught? What's your view on that? Can it be inculcated, so to speak, in this group?
Well, I think Slade and Lindsey probably both would tell you, yeah, you can teach toughness, and a lot of it's by your effort in the weight room, showing up every day. It's icky out there, you're doing it. Your teammates are all out there. They make you feel like you better toughen up.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always seen that at any level. There are guys from the time you were in the 4th and 5th grades starting to play football, that there were kids that the coach said, you aren't very tough. And, you know, if you saw the kid 3 or 4 years later and he was an all-world, and they learned to toughen up. And I think that's what they're trying to instill in these kids.
If they have the work ethic for it.
That's true. And the leadership. That's exactly true.
And those that don't may not, have the opportunity to keep going in the current state of affairs. So I know they're going to demand that kind of work ethic that you're talking about now. There was no questioning ever the work ethic of the teams that Steve Priest played on, the Giant Killers. And there is a film, Legend of the Giant Killers, and let's take a look at just a little piece of what Alex Crawford has put together featuring Steve and those legendary Oregon State teams.
Everybody that knows anything about the state of Oregon sports history will always remember this team, this year, this game.
In the state of Oregon, you say Giant Killers, people are like, oh boy, we know who they're talking about. They're talking about Oregon State football.
When we're all gone, people will still talk about that team.
Priest to the right, pitches out to Billy May. He's to the 10, to the 5. He's to the 2, to the 1. He scores!
Those were the days of the draft and, Vietnam.
Big, tough farm boys, most of them from Oregon.
Skip Vanderbutt came in and hit O.J. Simpson as hard as he has ever been hit.
Why do we have to play you? Why couldn't we play somebody good?
Biggest game ever. Biggest game ever. We all laughed and we said, bring them on.
Give to Bill Enyard. Big hole, left tackle, breaks in the clear at the 40, the 45, the 50, the 40, the 35, the 30. He cuts the 25.
We would have followed that man into hell. We loved Coach Andrews.
Not allowing the players to have water is really stupid.
They think they're tougher than we are. They're not.
I guarantee you we're going to beat those Ducks.
As Oregon State today, with what has to be one of the proudest victories any team has ever achieved.
Just seeing that, listening to that brings chills. Just listening to the late Bob Blackburn's calls. You'll have a chance to see the film in its entirety. That was just a little snippet coming up at McMenamin's Mission Theater Monday night, November 23rd at 7 o'clock. Admission is $10. You can find out more by going to the website legendofthegiantkillers.com. That's a showing I'm looking forward to attending on the 23rd. Lindsey Schnell, you've already seen the film, so you have, as in most things, the advantage on us. But what did you think of what Alex Crawford and company put together?
Well, I think it's worth noting that Alex is a 2013, is that accurate? 2013 OSU grad who wanted to teach our generation about the Giant Killers. I thought it was awesome. Mike, I was thinking of you the entire time because it's one big history lesson, and we know that you love history. So I thought if you grew up in the state, even if you weren't an Oregon State fan, you would love it. There's so many references to so many things things that were going on in the state. And Steve, I thought one of the coolest things was being able to sit there and watch it, as so many of your former teammates watched it too, and hear their reactions and watch them and react to the film.
Well, you know, Lindsay, we had people from all over the country. Louis Armstrong came back from Texas, and we had guys from San Francisco. You know, Skip Vanderbilt was there, who was a 12-year NFL veteran and great football player. Gary Hauser, who was in the football business for 36 years at Shasta and Chico State as a coach, and guys from all over. We had representation from every position category there. And, you know, this is something that we were all kind of expecting more of what the trailer was, a short highlight film, and it turns out it's over an hour long, and it's really fun, and there's great commentary, and he throws in the times. That's what I thought they did a great job with. They brought in the Vietnam War. They brought in some of the socio and economic issues of our time and what we faced as players, and it was really
It's fascinating. It's fascinating, and it's like, I hope everyone goes to see it. They're working on getting a Corvallis screening. They don't have the details of that yet, but you know, you got to go. There are some jokes, and people take some shots at our buddy Steve here. A couple of people questioning his quarterbacking abilities, but I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. You guys won a lot.
And Steve, we'll close on this. The film, the game footage matched up with Bob Blackburn's calls, but there's a lot of looks at the legendary play that Jess Lewis made in catching O.J.
Yeah, I mean, it's phenomenal. We had 4 All-Americans on that team, a consensus, John Didion and Jesse Lewis and John Sandstrom. And the play that Jesse makes that's so much thought about and talked about, you also see Harry Gunner, who was an 8-9-year NFL veteran too, a former basketball player, and how he's a part of this. And you show how Sandstrom is a part of it by slowing O.J. down until Jess can come clear across the field and make this play, and it's pretty amazing.
Well, I think that the current staff should watch it too, as they try to learn more and more about the history of this place.
We appreciate, and yeah, that's a great idea, and we appreciate the labors that Alex Crawford put in on the film, and hope that you'll be part of that November 23rd screening, Legend of the Giant Killers, and that's coming to McMenamin's November 23rd. Coming up on Talkin Beavers, we'll learn a little bit more about the next opponent as the Beavers go down and try to be a giant killer of sorts with an upset on the road. It's all coming up as we roll on with Talkin Beavers. And to get that done, Nigel Burton has a breakdown for us. Nigel, what's coming up?
Hey, Mike, coming up next, I'll show you what fans can anticipate from the Cal offense this week against the Beavs.
Oregon State heads down the stretch, and it's really been infrequent to be, quote-unquote, playing out the string. The Beavers will not have a bowl game at the end of this season. That's only happened one other time in the modern era where you didn't have something to play for into the last game, and that was 2011 when the team finished 3-9. And every other year, while there wasn't always a bowl game at the end of it, there was always something into the last game to play for. So, Slade, this is different for a lot of these guys. So these last 3 weeks with no bowl game at the end, you never experienced that because you were always either in bowls or playing for one. So what do you think the priority should be over these last 3 weeks?
You know, right now it's going to be finding your leaders for next year. I think if I were Coach Anderson, I would look at my younger players and maybe even take a group of them and start meeting with them and just getting his expectations out there. And look, going forward, starting this next season, this is what I want from you guys. This is what I want to see off and on the field. Because right now the season's lost. So develop as much as you can with the youth and go from there.
I love that point. I think that good programs win because of internal leadership. I also think, you know, I liked what Josh Mitchell said after the game after UCLA. He said, hey, we could still upset someone. We could ruin someone else's season. That would be, you could go out on a high note. You know, I don't think you should be looking ahead to the Ducks because you got a couple games before that. But that's something to keep in mind. That would bring a lot of, that would just make you feel really good. And right now, I'm not sure that these guys feel really good.
And even just for the recruiting effort and trying to fundraise and get everything built, we want built there, a win at Oregon
can go a long
would be
way.
huge starting the entire next season.
But Gary has also said, I asked him about what the priorities would be in terms of young players, and he said, we're not going to have the bowl practices, so we're going to treat practices as if they were in terms of the amount of reps that young players and returning players will get. So in absence of a bowl game, the practices will be treated much like they were getting ready for a bowl, so they'll still get all of that work in. However, this potential to spring an upset that Josh Mitchell refers to, what about it? It's time for our Burton's Breakdown, brought to you by Standard TV and Appliance. Standard TV and Appliance, setting the standard since 1947. Nigel, can they do it?
So, if we're going to talk about how Oregon State is going to take on the Cal Bears this weekend defensively, we actually have to talk about the Ducks. I know, don't turn the channel, and I know it may gross a lot of Beaver fans out, but the Ducks have shifted to a much simpler scheme away from their zones to playing a man-to-man type of defense, very similar to what Kalani Sitake has done in simplifying the Beaver defense. Now, Cal responded by throwing a lot of screens and crossing routes in order to run away from that man-to-man coverage. Let's take a look at the In-Focus Mondo Pad, collaboration that works, to see what I'm talking about. Now, the thing that Oregon State's going to have to do is learn how to deal with a lot of these crossing routes. Now, you can see the tight ends here are going to end up doing crossing routes here in the red zone. And Oregon does a great job of getting their hands on the routes and even using a little bit of, well, let's just go ahead and say it, holding. But that's what you have to do. You actually don't want to have to sit and wait for the crossing routes to develop, because all those receivers will do is sit in the holes that you create. Here, Cal also responds, tight ball game still, by countering man-to-man that Oregon's bringing with screens. But you'll see the defensive linemen do a great job coming out of the rush lanes and responding to the screen and rallying. So if Oregon State's going to play man-to-man versus Cal, they have to anticipate them responding with screens and crossers and respond accordingly.
There was also a sense, Steven Anderson, the tight end, saying that we got away from some of that shorter intermediate stuff and tried to take shots downfield. They hit some big ones, but certainly a bear raid attack that has a lot of resources. 16 different guys have caught passes for them.
First of all, I just want to say, Nigel, that you and I are in a fight right now.
Speaking of taking shots.
What's it all about?
He called me out Friday night. He tried to blame him picking the Beavers to win by 50 on me, even though I had nothing to do with that. But look, the bottom line is that Cal, very talented. Jared Goff, he is an NFL quarterback waiting to happen. They're going to have their work cut out for them. You got to stop a lot of stuff if you want a shot at winning this game.
And they got some real talented receivers, too. However, Jared has thrown a lot of interceptions this year. I mean, granted,
agree.
A lot of it's Utah, so he does make mistakes, and those are there for the taking.
I completely agree. Against Oregon, you know, at one point he released the ball and then he slipped. Like, there was some stuff like back. He looked like he had regressed also, kind of backtracking.
He was wearing gloves, something he hadn't done the last time that he played in the rain. The forecast a little bit iffy. We'll wait and see what unfolds. But we're going to learn more as we continue on Talkin' Beavers about the next opponent. And Sonny Dykes, 2 years left on his contract, has yet to have been proffered an extension. They're one win away from bowl eligibility, and the Beavers deny them that. We'll talk about it on Talkin' Beavers.
Climbs the pocket, sets his feet.
It was a good football game. I mean, it was one of those games where, you know, we kind of got off to a good start, and then Oregon State made a run at us.
On play action, Ramel Dockery. Touchdown. They put it on the ground again, trusting Daniel Lasco, and he rewards their confidence.
We were fortunate to make some plays down the stretch and win a tough road game. And, you know, winning in Corvallis is a hard thing to do. It really is.
Looking for the edge, and he's got it, and the touchdown.
That was a fun game, big win for us, you know, to go up to Oregon State and get that win, and had a lot of big plays defensively that I think were very encouraging to see.
And untouched.
That was a game where we had to really play really good for 4 quarters, and we did. And, it was good to see that for sure.
Jared Goff had a brilliant game. The Beavers had a lead in the fourth quarter, not able to hang on and win it. But it is 2015 in a new era. California got off to that 5-0 start, now sitting at 2-4 in the Pac-12 North. And it's been an interesting tale for Cal, but not an unfamiliar one. The Beavers will try to keep Cal going down on that downward spiral. However, it does have something to do with who they played, in that their losses have been to Utah, UCLA, USC, and Oregon. I mean, that's a pretty good gauntlet there. So,
especially when you can't play defense.
They were taking the ball away on defense early. We'll get back to that in a moment, Lindsay. But you're right. Oregon did roll up, as we're seeing here, some huge numbers. A school record, 777 yards for Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, and this is, hey, I've been a fan of Vernon Adams all season. This is why. But the thing is, with Cal, their defense is so bad that offensively, I think you can take some shots at them. You can get, if you can get up early, that's huge. But it's all about Jared Goff. You've got to force him into some picks, Slade. I mean, we saw that at Utah. He looked like a freshman, I thought, at Utah. But what's the key to being able to pick him off, do you think? Does he make a lot? I don't think he makes very many bad decisions.
His decisions are fine. I think he's had bad luck, to be honest. It's like, it's been tipped balls. It's been that one errant throw that he does, and the guys always seem to catch it. He's always had every single bad thing he's done caught, which a lot of quarterbacks.
At Utah, one was not his fault, but
with this team though, when with Jared, I think, and just with Cal's history, I mean, back when they played us in 2007, they lost that hard loss where at the end of the game with Kevin Riley messing up right there. And then with the Utah, 6 turnovers, I think it was, just a crazy loss with that game. It's really turned the tide for their seasons, and Cal has had a history of doing that. And so they just got to learn how to come back and continue playing good ball like they should be.
The glove thing is interesting that you pointed out in the last segment.
And it certainly seemed to hinder, he was 18 for 41 at Oregon, and so.
Ooh. And that's not a good defense either, to be clear.
Slade, you mentioned 2007. You were part of that team that beat Cal, and the Beavers have been part of those 5-0 starts for the Golden Bears, disrupting them on a couple of occasions in 05, in 07, and I remember even in 03, Aaron Rodgers and company had just beaten USC, and the Beavers came in and behind Steven Jackson won there in 03. So it's a good thing this game is at Memorial Stadium, right?
We always win at Cal Stadium. I remember Coach Riley saying that at the end of that game.
It's a big challenge to try to get it done this time, and we'll see if the Beavers can, as Slade just talked about, reminding us of the Beavers always winning at Memorial Stadium. No matter what, every week when we check in with Slade at the OSU Beaver store, it's a win for all of us. Let's see what Slade has going on this week. Slade?
Hey, Beaver fans. I'm here today in Salem at the Kaiser Station location, and we're focusing on the hats this week, as you can see. I want to start with the beanies. All different kinds. The selection is huge. They can be reversible. Anything you need. I personally love the tassels. Beanies, get them here. Move on to the baseball caps. Whether it's baseball, basketball, anything kind of Beaver cap you need, they're going to have it here. And when you're over there and you're at the game and all of a sudden you see the wave coming up, this hat has it all. You can get crazy, it doesn't matter. So get over here, guys. We got a lot of hats. Fans start here.
It's time now for the Toyota of Portland on Broadway tune-up, as we come to you from the In Focus Mondo pad with Slade Norris, as the Beavers have been preparing, tuning up, as it were, for the California Golden Bears. And Slade, you've broken down the 4, in your view anyway, the top 4 weapons for the Golden Bears.
I have this week, and we're going to start off on defense with the guy, Kyle Cragen, is our number 4. Now, great NFL pedigree. His father, Greg, played 13 years in the NFL and never let Kyle play tackle football until he got to high school. Interesting fact.
Yeah.
But he's really jumping the scene. 5 sacks this season, really getting a lot of pressure on the quarterback. 6'2", 245, an athletic guy off the edge. Last week with our quarterback struggles, we've got to give him some protection, and holding back Kyle is the best way to do that.
Now, Kyle is part of a defensive unit that was torched for 777 yards in their last game, so you know they're going to want to come out and play much more fiercely and effectively.
Definitely. And you know what? They give up a ton of yards, but because of guys like this, they still stay in the games. They have the most takeaways in the Pac-12 this year so far. And Darius White's a big reason for that. 3 interceptions on the year. He has a forced fumble. The ball is kind of magnetized to his hands. We got to be real careful tossing the rock around this week because they have a lot of ball hawks like Darius that want to take it away.
He is one of 10 different players for Cal. That's a phenomenal number that has at least 1 interception. So while they've given up a lot of yards and points, they've been able early when they were 5-0, taking the ball away a lot.
They have, which is huge for a team with a quarterback like this, with the ball in his hands, and magical things happen.
So who's number 3? Number 2.
Number 2 is Kenny Lawler. You know, he is a phenomenal wide receiver. Does a lot of things for him. Really, the last 2 weeks hasn't caught a lot of passes, only 2 and 3. But as you can see later in this next clip, it's because he got taken out during the Oregon game and did not return throughout the game. He was banged up for the USC game, but as of right now, tied for 2nd in the Pac-12 with 9 touchdown passes caught. And the guy is phenomenal. He's a taller wide receiver, a real great athlete. He's gonna be a guy we have to watch for this next week.
And you don't even have Bryce Treggs up there, who caught an 80-yard touchdown pass. Maurice Harris, a 57-yard touchdown pass against Oregon from this guy, Jared Goff, last week.
And Goff, you know, he's obviously the number 1. He is the best player on their team, and really started off the season supposed to be the first Pac-12 player, the first national player taken in the draft. He had all these credentials going in, and this season has been somewhat of a struggle for him. He had 5 interceptions against Utah. You know, still 2nd in the Pac-12 in passing yards and in passing touchdowns, 2nd to Luke Falk. But the year hasn't gone as magically as he'd wanted it to. Still playing great, and I'm excited to see what he can do this week.
What do you think's happened? I know we looked at numbers earlier about the 4-game losing streak. Have teams been able to disguise things or bring pressure to get Goff a little bit off his rhythm?
I think it's been pressure. He has been taken down a few times, but for him, really, it's just the interceptions. He makes some errant throws every once in a while, and it seems like every single bad choice he makes ends up getting caught, which sometimes he can get lucky. This season, he hasn't so far.
Well, the Beavers are hopeful that they can continue their magical streak at Memorial Stadium in Berkeley. Coming up, we'll talk about that, whether the Beavers can get it done, and also kind of disappointing news in that Datron Guyton no longer with the team. We'll talk about that and more as we wrap things up next on Talkin Beavers. Welcome into Talkin Beavers. That's where we're heading, a $320 million upgrade over recent years. It is one of the great sights. We're going to see it at night, a night kickoff. But Strawberry Canyon, Tightwad Hill, the beautiful bay. It's Memorial Stadium, the Beavers at Cal. And we'll get you prepared for the trip with Inside the Huddle Thursday at 8 o'clock here on CSNNW. Hashtag Beavers Football with Slade Norris. Thursday, right behind Steve Priest and Gary Anderson at 8:30 Thursday. CSN Game Day on Saturday morning. And, of course, next Wednesday, Talkin Beavers at 9:30. Please note the special time as the Beavers do indeed get ready for a trip to a place that they've had great success in, memorable games in. For the Beavers to have that, we'll get to one thing here in a moment. But Gary Anderson did announce this week the unfortunate news, the dismissal of Datron Guyton, a redshirt freshman from Manor High School in Austin, Texas, from the team. Datron no longer part of the team, and that's unfortunate on a lot of levels, of course. But not meeting the expectations of a student athlete, a reason cited in violation of team rules and failing to meet the expectations for a student athlete. This is a young man that showed some real signs of talent, a big target, talented player. But the fit right now going forward, just not quite right. And Gary Anderson has said that he's going to do everything he can to help Datron move on to another program in another place, but some issues manifested themselves here, and he's no longer part of the team.
Yeah, and I don't think that we need to speculate on what those things are. I'm a big believer that what goes on in the locker room stays in the locker room. I will say this, Gary Anderson doesn't mess around, there had to be a reason that he was kicked off the team.
And Slade, that's significant to me. We don't need to belabor particulars here now, but I do think, as Lindsay alludes to, there's kind of a message here about where the program's going and what the expectations are. If you don't meet them, there could be some reckoning.
Completely. I love it. And what I talked about at the beginning of the show is that attention to detail. Obviously, he wasn't doing that. I don't know if it was affecting the rest of the team, but having a guy right there that's obviously doing enough to have something like that happen isn't good for the guys to be around. So, like I said earlier, slowly weeding out the guys that are hurting the team or, converting them over finally to buying in, that's an example right there of what we're starting. Coach Anderson took a firm hand right from the beginning and set a message.
Anderson said after the UCLA game, he said, the strong will survive and the weak are going to get weeded out in one way or another. And I think that that's just, one more way that he's done that. Like I said, he's subtly called them out. But one thing I appreciate about Anderson is that he takes responsibility. Like as a head coach, he said afterward, we have to ask ourselves, do we need to coach him better or are we refusing to learn? But he's putting it on himself. First, he said something about taking it right between the eyes. Like it's on him, it's his win-loss record that's suffering. But more going back to, he cares about these kids. I really believe, like, the more I'm around him, the more I think he is a really good fit at Oregon State.
And the caring factor, of course, he wants a reward. He keeps talking about the seniors and hoping that the seniors can go out and have something to really be excited about here. Josh Mitchell talked about springing an upset is still out there for them. Lindsay, do they have a shot? What's the one or couple of things they need to do to get that upset?
Okay, you guys are going to think I'm crazy. Do you think that they can get into a shootout? Because I think that's how you beat Cal. Because let's be clear that defense is horrible. They rank 12th. They give up 458 yards a game. Is that what it is?
Well, they do take the ball away, though, as Slade and I alluded to earlier. So horrible, relative term.
Okay.
I'm not sure the Beavers are equipped to get into a classic shootout.
Listen, I think that they can. All right, I'm going to be an optimist this week. I think if you can get into a shootout, you can absolutely beat them. Maybe they're not a horrible defense. Maybe that was the last 2 years, but they're still pretty bad. Their defense is not winning them games.
I think it's a great week, I agree, to get our offense back on track and get a little mojo on that side. But I think you have to hold them under 30. They haven't won a game this season that they scored under 30 points. So that's obviously the matchup for Cal. Score over 30, you win the game. That's what we got to do.
So Oregon State just needs to score 31, which for them, that might qualify as a shootout score.
Well, and that's been their high water mark in offensive. I mean, they scored 31 in a loss, but they do need to score some points, take advantage in the red zone. I think the defense has got to find ways to get Jared Goff off his game a little bit, as Oregon was able to do, and as Utah was able to do.
Pressure on him. Oregon State can get pressure on him.
Lindsay, Slade, thank you. The one thing turns into several. We appreciate that every week. And we appreciate you joining us every week here. Suffice it to say, we'll be back again. Remember, next Wednesday at 9:30, the Beavers heading to Strawberry Canyon. And we'll be back again next week to break it down for